Hello, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, please be welcome to the Changemakers G20 Summit. My name is Diana Murrieta, President and founder of Nosotras para Ellas, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the strategy litigation of sexual and family violence. I am a weekly gender columnist of the Heraldo de Mexico, national newspaper, and activist for women rights and in Mexico, and as a consultant and speaker of issues of feminist and violence against women. Today, I have the honor to introduce you to the panel discussion The Role of the Youth in the Implementation of the United States G20 Agenda. Interdependence, interdependence between youth along the diversity of contexts, perspectives, and means of incidence is necessary to guarantee the fulfillment of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In advocacy of the principles of fair representations towards all the perspectives and approach a session of the role of youth in implementation of the 2030 agenda with a specific focus in SDGs 5, 6, 8 will be held. This panel will consist of three stages of dialogue. During the first stage, speakers will address one topic within the framework of the SDG of their choice. Each speaker will facilitate a 5-minute speech. During the second stage, speakers will dialogue for the participants in this session to raise questions relatable of the contents and the perspective speech. A maximum of 2 questions are allowed to be raised of each speaker. During the third stage, the dialogue will be open to the participant to the session to make interventions. A maximum of 8 interventions will be taken, each for 5 minutes. So, everyone is going to introduce yourself. So, if we can start with Juliany, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Diana, for the space and for the presentation. I am Juliany Alcocer. I am 23 years old, and I am from Mexico City and Querétaro City. And I am currently the founder of World Without Weapons, a local initiative of youth that creates informative content regarding disarmament, armed conflict, and what we also do is promote and work towards the consolidation of international and sustainable peace. And I was also part of an internship program at the Agency for the Provision of Nuclear Weapons in Latin America and the Caribbean, and also at the Permanent Mission of Mexico to the United Nations. Thank you for having me, and I am very happy to share what I have seen in my own country.
Thanks, Juliany. Second, we can introduce to María Fernanda Cámara.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you here. My name is María Fernanda Cámara, but everybody calls me Mafer. I'm from Mexico, from the southern of Mexico, especially a little state called Tabasco. And I born and raised in a little town called Jalapa, so I have very connected to the rural areas and rural zones in Latin America and the Caribbean. I'm feminist from all my life, and I'm an advocate of the women's right. Now I'm I'm part of the advisors of the government of Mexico around gender equality at the Minister of the Interior, and I'm very passionate about the ecofeminism activists with my organization Latinas for Climate. Thank you so much.
Thanks, María Fernanda. Then we have Santiago.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this space. My name is Santiago Flores. I'm an 18-year-old climate justice activist from Mexico City. I am the founder and international leader of Saving Tuvalu, which is a non-governmental organization aimed at amplifying the narratives of marginalized communities in the South Pacific. I am also currently serving as Mexico's climate advisor for Child Rights International Network at the Committee on the Rights of the Child in the United Nations, and I am a constitutive member of Mexico's Ecological Assembly. I've had the honor to share this panel with such distinguished speakers, and I am so proud that these are the people that that I can speak alongside with in this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Santiago. Then we have Jesús.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be in this space. My name is Jesús Maya. I'm a 22-year-old man. I am an international relations student, and I am a summer school graduate from the London School of Economics. Also, I am an entrepreneur, social entrepreneur, and activist, founder of Popotepetl, a startup of edibles trust, and current co-founder of Cervezas y Banza, which is the first circular economy beer made with bread in Mexico. I am awarded the 2018 National Youth Award, and also I am awarded with the recognition of Young Innovator Creating a Better World for All by the Women Economic Forum. And well, also I've been participating in several forums and conferences in Mexico and Latin America. I have a TEDx speaking, well, like opportunity speaking for the TEDx Ventura Puente and in TEDx Morelia, and also a young legislator from a local government here in Querétaro. I'm from Querétaro, Mexico. And also I have the opportunity to be as a participant, as a youth delegate at the UNHLPF with MGCY. And also I have been working in terms of innovation and empowering youth for local government and public policy designing. So it's really an honor to be here with you. It's really an honor to be sharing this space with everyone here. And also I'm open to any questions you want to put on or make us. So really, thank you for this space.
Thanks, Jesus. So we have another speaker, but because of the internet conditions of Mexico, he cannot be here, but it's going to be last with us, and it's Patricio Castillo. So we shall proceed to the first stage of the panel discussion. Juliany, you have the floor.
Distinguished panelists and guests, I would first like to express my gratitude for granting us this space. If we think about the meaning of peace, we automatically think of it being limited to absence of conflict. But if we dive deep into its meaning, we will find a world of definitions. My personal definition would include aspects of life. It is a process at an individual and collective level within people and nature that establishes that there is a harmony within diversity and cultural, social, and political differences. Getting to this definition has been a long journey of changing my way of viewing the world and what makes it our home. First, realizing that oneself is a whole world in our own head and that others have their own world as well. This was the beginning for me of thinking that we should not always think and believe in the same things. Second, by recognizing that we should not always think through a people-centered approach, but through a living being-centered approach, in which we acknowledge and recognize that there are others that should be respected and that can contribute to peace, and are in fact being affected by its absence. And third, noticing that the more diverse society is, the more enriching it can be. This does not necessarily mean that there will be more conflicts. On the contrary, there are more perspectives and opinions to solve problems within society. For youth, speaking on behalf of what I have witnessed through different forums and spaces, we seek not only to be respected and treated in the same way as decision makers, but to actually take note of what young people from different corners, contexts, and backgrounds of the world that do not attend to the international forums have to say and bring to the different processes that make decisions on behalf of youth and children. The international geopolitical context has shown that we have faced a polarized society. According to the Geneva Academy, in the Middle East and North of Africa, there are more than 45 armed conflicts. In Africa, there are 35. In Asia, there are 21. In Europe, there are 7. And in Latin America, there are 6, having in total a number of 114 armed conflicts today, and some of which are recent, while others have lasted more than 50 years. For example, in my own country, we face a critical situation regarding human rights violations, drug cartels, criminal organizations, femicides, and missing persons. But that has not stopped us, the young people and children, from making initiatives and projects at a local level focused on SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. In Mexico, my home country, we have worked on narrowing the SDGs at a local level through the contextualization of the problems we face. Especially speaking about SDG 16, even though disarmament is not at the core of this SDG, we have one of the most important treaties, Treaty of Tlatelolco, which established the first nuclear weapon-free zone in Latin America and the Caribbean in the 1960s, including the establishment of the Agency for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in Latin America and the Caribbean, OPANAL. I was part of the internship program this first half of the year in OPANAL, which through its outreach and education courses made a relevant impact in my life, which led me to start my own platform of education on disarmament and armed conflict and the promotion of sustainable international peace, which is called World Without Weapons, an informative initiative from youth which is aimed at simplifying facts for the public in general with an intersectional and inclusive perspective. The young people and children in Mexico have united to combat the current social and political challenges we face when working for the consolidation of peace at a local and national level. Our way of viewing the world sometimes even means not being late at night on the streets and staying home. It also means to check on our activist friends to know they are okay. It means not going to known dangerous parts of the country. It means constantly telling our friends and family where we are, so that they do not have to worry. It also means looking for political spaces to be able to participate and make our own government accountable on matters related to human rights and sustainability. But it also represents that we have an enriching, diverse cultural background. It represents the hardworking people willing to help whenever it is needed. It represents the political will we have of wanting and working for change. It represents the unity when facing social and humanitarian problems. It represents the passion of the people for the things they believe in. It represents the noise of the beautiful music and the magical taste of our food. It represents the landscapes full of biodiversity, and it represents, most of all, hope. Hope from the Mexican youth and children working towards achieving sustainable peace. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Juliany. So then we have the interventions of María Fernanda. So,
good morning, everyone. Afternoon or night, depends where you are. I'm María Fernanda Cámara, Mexican, and feminist as far back as I remember. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you, discuss a crucial topic for the advance of our society, the role of the young women in the implementation of Sustainability Development Goal number 5, gender equality. We will explore how youth feminism has become a driving force to achieve gender equality worldwide. International context of this topic is important because we have a lot of challenges related to the gender equality persist around the world. Despite significant progress in recent decades, women and girls continue to face barriers in terms of access to education, political participation, wage parity, and representation in leadership roles. According to the data from the United Nations in 2022, women held only 25% of the parliamentary seats worldwide and earned an average of 20% less than men. Furthermore, gender-based violence remains a growing reality. 1 of 3 women has experienced psychological or sexual violence at some point in their lives. In this way, the role of the young women plays a pivotal role in the pursuit of gender equality. They are change agencies, visionary, and advocates for equality. Their voices are energy, are vital in the driving positive transformation across all species of our society. The active participation of the young woman in political, economic, and social decision-making is essential for achieving sustainability and equality development. Now, the youth feminist has an emergency of one of the most powerful forms of activism to promote gender equality in our society. Young activists are using digital tools and social platforms to amplify their voices and build networks of society of a global scale. There are the challenging deep skills, cultural norms, demanding policy changes, and lending the essential conversation about consent, wage equality, and obviously reproductive rights. Now, we need to call to action. The path to gender equality is not easy, but is essential to move toward. As individuals committed to a better world, we have the responsibility to support and empower young women and girls in their efforts to create meaningful change. In my opinion, we need to concrete actions we call all to undertake. In the first line, education. We must educate ourselves about this issue faced by women and girls worldwide. Awareness is the first step toward action. In the second line, the final support. Back organizations with money, back projects that empower young women and girls to promote gender equality in local and international communities, because this is a problem, international problem. It's not only in one country or two countries. In the true line, advocacy and mentorship. Provide safe spaces. Be a feminist in this world. It's problematic for all mental health, but it's necessary for the world. We need safe spaces where young women and girls express themselves and develop their leadership skills, offer mentorships and support to help them reach their full potential. Political advocacy. Support the vote for policies and leaders who campaign the gender equality and work to eliminate discrimination and violence in our world. Finally, active participation. Engage in conversations about gender equality and try to create this conversation in your life, in your daily life. Create this conversation in your work and in your school and in your house. This is an essential part of the take action. For me, in conclusion, it's easy. Young women and young feminists are crucial drivers for the gender equality and advancing the Sustainability Development Goal agenda from the United Nations. If we don't include the voices of young girls and young women in this conversation, we don't increase our sustainability development goals. By uniting in support of these struggles, create a fairer and more equality world for all individuals. Together, we can achieve the equality we reserve a vibrant future for generations to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria Fernanda. Then we have the intervention of Santiago.
Thank you very much, Diana, for this opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, allow me to commence my statement with the following quote. El agua no es un privilegio, es un derecho humano. Water is no privilege, it is a human right. Mexico is a country where even though more than 12 million people do not have access to basic clean water and sanitation services, the control of water resources is centralized in the hands of a few actors. In the cities, a water management system that promotes inequality gaps between individuals, benefits centralized regions, and undermines the neighborhoods and suburbs of the periphery. In rural communities, the lack of water management systems, alongside the difficult accessibility to basic water supply and sanitation services, contribute to the social backwardness to which these people have been subjected to. The restoration and preservation of natural resources has been compromised by extractive development models that centralize capital as the main asset, even though natural resources represent the pillars of global economies. The Mexican state must transcend economic interests based on the neocolonial, imperialist, and extractive regime through which the states of the global north continue to exploit the natural resources to expand their stock markets. Community resilience in line with adaptation to climate impacts requires both a technical and budgetary allocation in line with the particular needs of each community. advocacy for the international cancellation of illegitimate financial debts, and the reclamation of ecological debts safeguards the principles of integrity, dignity, and justice for those who have contributed the least and yet have been affected the most. Given the lack of reparations to restore and preserve natural resources, social collectives have found in the creation of social ties the most effective mechanisms to guarantee water defense and enforce the protection of their human rights. The Third National Assembly for Water and Life represents a clear example of the power in collectivity to redefine the system and reach common outcomes. An assembly process in which native peoples, local neighborhoods, and colonies gather in the heart of the watershed in the Valley of Mexico. Solutions against extractivism, dispossession, and the privatization of water were raised, amplified, and uplifted on the tables. Living in an era where radical love wins revolutions, standing up with each other and fighting collectively from a place of understanding is our only path towards freedom. Stand up with the defenders, with women and children, with native and indigenous peoples from a place of solidarity. Amplify their voices and use your own to push for equitable representation in systemic processes where no one is left behind. Find a community where the power of each and every one of your words is not a matter of question, but an opportunity to learn from others and shape new horizons. Fight for liberation of all populations and condemn any acts of violence exercised against the environment and its communities. El agua no es un privilegio, el agua es un derecho humano. Water is not a privilege, it is a human right before both the Mexican political constitution and the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights that deserves to be restored and preserved for the sake of the livelihoods of present and future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Santiago. Then we have Jesus. So,
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you the following talk. In order to talk about sustainable production and consumption, we need to think about the basic unit of all production and consumption, as we know it in today's society, which is business. For instance, just in Mexico, from all the waste, almost 50,000 tons are produced from plastic. In stadiums, that's basically like filling the Aztec soccer stadium 3 times each week. That's a lot. And just a tiny bit is recycled. Actually, 95% is not. Most of this trash ends up in the ocean. On the other hand, we have food waste, which is affecting greatly, leaving 50% of the produce directly going to waste. In other words, business as usual is no longer usual. If we want to create a differentiated approach on tackling the waste and consumption problems we have in today's society. For change to be addressed, we need to talk about the tools for change within entrepreneurship, and specifically social entrepreneurship in Mexico. Talking about this aspect is talking about a business model where the most important thing is not to earn money, but to solve a social problem. Whether it's things like climate change, the inequality gap, or violence, social enterprises are proposals that gradually seek to improve the world around us without depending on donations and understanding situations empathetically. It is there where the virtue of generating an idea, validating it, and launching it with an end is born to solve and impact positively. And particularly for this to happen, we need to understand four important aspects. First, we need to design businesses to impact from the very beginning. That is to say, impact from design. It's not about talking about architectural stuff or fashion model stuff. It's about taking into account the very ends and means of a business to exist. Then we have the self acknowledgement. We need to be self aware what the business is for and what it can be done with the business at hand. It's also understanding that it's not just the actions taken in the business per se, but actually understanding the other impacts around what we can do. Then we have the natural capital. That is to say, not the resources of money that we can create from a business idea or a business proposal, but actually understanding that nature has a lot to do with it. It has to do with the way we act, it has to do with the actual environment we live in, and understand that without it, business can no longer exist. And finally, to understand the supply chain consciousness. That is to say that we also have to do something towards the idea of what we can do as a product or service and its impact on what we have on the other sides of things. That is to say, what we have on the social aspect, what we have on the supply chain of produce, from raw materials to everything. With taking all this into account, we have then sustainable production and the means of taking actions. But we need also to address something really important in all these four aspects, and that is adaptation. Without adaptation in business, and not just in the market side of things, adaptation also in the means of doing the responsible thing, which is making sustainable development and production and consumption a thing to be done in all the aspects of the business perspective. With that, sustainable production and consumption can then be attainable. But also, we need to be really careful with something. We need to avoid greenwashing. That is to say, we cannot say things that we're not committed to do as business. We cannot do or we cannot create a specific line of communication of doing actions that are not obtainable, neither have the accountability to be shared with our specific market. Then, with all these ideas, we have then all the necessary tools and strategies towards making a different approach on what we can do on sustainable development. That is to say, to be able to understand products as a service, sharing economies, alternative economics, product life optimization and extension, and then waste minimizing and resource maximization. Entrepreneurship means having the strength to start, the openness to learn, and the blind ingenuity to believe. It is precisely at this point where I have found the greatest challenges in my life as a young person having entrepreneurship. Starting things when you are young is difficult because many people not only believe you are incapable or inexperienced, but they invalidate your ability according to your age range, or failing that they take advantage of this lack of experience or ingenuity to take advantage of you. And in the worst case, they make you less despite having experienced even a little that part of having a world of adult people. However, we're not experiences of failure, or we're not the times we have been told no. On the contrary, we are, as entrepreneurs, the opportunity to make things happen and have the strength to happen in the best possible way. My first company failed, but despite this, I continue to undertake and to design things on a sustainable development perspective. And I had to be the hero of myself. Now that I'm a co-founder of the first bread beer that cuts food waste out of the process and reintroduces it to the final product, we now understand that entrepreneurship is not just making business for the sake of making business. It's a close and a really personal process when we can impact the lives of the people we are involved with. It's being responsible and having the opportunity to do things differently. And this is where we see the value of social entrepreneurship, going back to the roots of everything to make an impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesus. And then we have Patricio intervention, who's going to be, it's not live, but it's a video. So if we can share, I don't know if we can.
Element, esteemed guests and fellow participants. Today, I stand before you to discuss a topic of utmost importance for the present and the future of our world: the crucial role of young people in shaping the circular economy and the SDG 8. The challenges we face today, from environmental degradations to resource scarcity, call for innovative solutions, and it is the youth who hold the potential to drive transformative change through their active participation in the circular economy. First, let's understand what the circular economy truly represents or really represents. It is a paradigm shift from the traditional linear model of take, make, and dispose to one that prioritizes sustainability, regeneration, and waste reduction. In a circular economy, products and materials are kept in use for as long as possible, with resources being recovered and repurposed at the end of their life cycles. This concept aligns perfectly with the goals of the environmental conservation and economic prosperity. The youth of today, armed with their dynamism, creativity, and affinity for the technologies, are the perfect catalysts for these transitions. Their fresh ideas and perspectives and willingness to challenge the status quo can lead the creation of innovative solutions that bridge the gap between economic growth and environmental preservation. Furthermore, embracing the circular economy isn't just an environmental imperative, it is economic opportunity. By participating in the circular economy, young entrepreneurs can create businesses that are not only profitable, but also environmentally responsible. Repurposing waste as raw materials, adopting eco-friendly manufacturing practices, and developing repair and refurbishment services can lead to new revenue streams and job opportunities. We need to remember the education is always the principal key for all is always the principal key of the solutions for all the issues. The education plays a pivotal role in empowering young people to actively engage in the circular economy. By integrating sustainability and circular economy principles into curricula, educational institutions can equip the youth with the knowledge and the skills they need to drive change. Practical experiences such as participating in waste reduction initiatives or collaborating with local businesses on sustainable projects can cultivate a generation that is attuned to the needs of both the economy and the environment. Collaboration is always the cornerstone of success in the transition to a circular economy. Government, private sector entities, non-governmental organizations, and educational institutions must join forces to create an enabling environment for young people. This includes providing platforms for mentorships, offering funding opportunities for circular economy ventures, and establishing policies that incentivize sustainable practices. However, to truly harness the potential of young people in the circular economy, we must address some challenges they might face. Access to the funding, mentorship, and networks is crucial for turning innovative ideas into viable solutions. Regulatory barriers that hinder circular practices should be examined and reformed to encourage sustainable entrepreneurships. In conclusion, the youth's participation in the circular economy is not just about solving environmental problems. It's about shaping a more equitable, prosperous, and sustainable future for all. Their enthusiasm, coupled with their innovative thinking, can redefine industries, reshape businesses models, and lead us towards a world where resources and share-sized waste is minimized and opportunities are abundant. Let us recognize the power of young people in driving the circular economy and work together to empower them to be the change makers of our world.
Thank you. So now we are on other second stage, so we want to hear you all. So you can ask questions to one of our panelists or all of them. So I don't know if we can raise hands, but I hope the summit team can help us with this, please.
When we talk about, when we talk about youth, right? We don't consider, sometimes we do not consider their opinion, or we disregard their opinion, which is not good, right? There is so much potential to tap on. Particularly this panel, this collective, when I see each one of you, you're youth, right? You're working in your fields, you're working in different various domains out there. So the kind of impact that each one of you is creating, it's going to amplify. with time. So I just wanted to give a big shout out to each one of you for doing the tremendous amount of work that you're doing out there, because it's important to have such conversations. We do tend to work, however we don't try to talk about it. So it's so important to talk about the work that we are doing, so that we are able to inspire people. And this is what this collective is doing. So thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts on the areas. I think we touched upon every theme in this panel, especially for this summit. We have climate action, we have gender, we have a lot of other themes, and I think everyone on this panel touched each one of the theme in some or the other way, which is quite interesting to see that how much potential we hold. So yeah, that's something that I just wanted to say. I thought I'll take the stage and I'll just say it out.
I wonder if you guys agree. Probably some of our participants cannot ask or raise any questions, but if they would like us to, we definitely can share several of our social platforms where you guys can reach out with any questions that you may think afterward. We are 100% keen to replying to everyone. If you can't think of any questions right now, but you figure out one in the following minutes, we definitely can do that.
Hey, Santi, there is a question in the chat from Deblina Sen. She's asking about how can young people effectively engage with and influence international policy-making processes to ensure the successful implementation of United Nations initiatives. That's a big question. I don't know if any one of you want to share about a thought on this specific topic.
I think that each of us could answer the question.
Yeah, the question is, how can young people effectively engage with and influence international policy-making processes to ensure the successful implementation of United Nations initiatives?
Okay, so if you want, I can start. And we can all go along in the order in that we participated. So I would say that, first of all, the first step would be to think of like the thing that moves you, or you could say systematically thing that you see that is repeating itself constantly, but you see that it doesn't change. And from that feeling that you have been like sensing and noticing that is not okay, that there is something that should change in that way, you should hold on to that feeling. We know we are emotional beings, and sometimes we have like ups and downs, and sometimes we get really motivated to do something and make a change, but sometimes we're feeling low and we're not that constantly changing or trying to do some activism. So I would say hold on to that, and something that you should actually like really focus on is on the discipline and the constant work of that feeling that you have of change, and being updated on the information. Because if you do not update yourself on information and on others, for example, I have a good group of friends, which are Fernanda, Diana, Jesús, and Santiago, and Patricio, which motivate me all the time to constantly question myself and question others and question my context and my reality. So you should also think of creating alliances and friendships within this, because it can be overwhelming sometimes. So from that emotional perspective, and of course mental health, sometimes it is very stressful and frustrating to see that things do not change. So I would really recommend you to create this support group of activism, and from that you could actually make progress on that. Our team, the 5 people that you see here, we're working constantly on trying to motivate each other, and to actually, if we have a space where we can share it with each other, we use it to actually see our different perspectives. As you can see, we have diverse profiles. So I think that that would be a great way of starting and actually trying to influence in policy. Some of my friends have indeed like even a more political or institutionalized activism like Jesús or like Diana and María Fernanda. Santiago and Patricio and me are a bit more into the like advocacy part and individual aspects, but they actually have an impact in policy. For example, Fernanda and Diana are one of our like top you could say mentors for us, which really show us how to influence on politics. And that should be something that I recommend you to do, to learn from someone how they can involve you and how they can share these processes and spaces with you.
Yes, in my opinion, it's the same as Juliany say. For me, the success of any initiative is the collaboration. The only way for the young people can be heard is collectively, creating a space of collaboration among us and try to create this channel, this alliance is the best strategic. If we are one in one way, we don't have the impact at the political decisions. But if we are a team, if we are a lot and we have collective projects, probably we have the opportunity to impact in the political decision and obviously impact in the decision of the implementation of the United Nations agenda. But now we try and we need to create a space of alliance. We are friends. The people in this event are all friends, and we work together and try to make the change and try to create this type of initiatives because we really respect the work of each other. And in that way, we collaborative as a friends, as a partners, but obviously with the respect and the collaborative initiative. That's my only tip for you.
On my side, I think I certainly agree with both Mafer and Juliany. I think that we as young people, we are facing this huge era in which the power is being redistributed from political spheres that beforehand hold the power. And now we are seeing how young people and children, we can actually reclaim that power to make our demands spearheaded and to make our human rights safeguarded, to raise the issues that concern us the most. In terms of implementation of United Nations policies and agreements, I do have to be keen on an aspect that is essential, and that is the state political will in order not only to implement the agreed negotiations, but also to make the different interlinks with young people in order to include them in the processes. So I believe that as young people, we not only have this leadership role within the social movement spheres, but also we do have a very important role in demanding accountability from our political leaders, in demanding that there is an allocation that is being either technical or monetary that is being allocated to restoration initiatives in terms of the environment. If we're speaking about social initiatives, that nonprofits are getting the visibility that they require, that the work that they're developing is actually being heard. I believe that we do need not only to join forces in order to make our voices be heard, but we also need to demand those empowered that hold those huge capabilities in terms of policy making to actually do their jobs and start including our demands in the implementation procedures of these agreements.
Finally, I don't want to be reiterative in the things that all my colleagues have been talking because it's amazing. I would just like to add something more. In order for the implementation of United Nations initiatives to happen, we need to really go to the local level of action. That is to say, it's really pretty that we can see all these referendums, all these actions, all these, like, for instance, agreements, partnerships, and everything coming from the United Nations. But in order for them to actually be held, we need action taking and making processes for it to happen. And that is to say that we need, as local individuals, to know which are our, for instance, our authorities on the aspects at hand. We need to know how to contact them, where to contact them, and then to design, for instance, specific projects or things related to the implementation of such actions in the local level. That is to say that we need to socialize whatever we're doing with other individuals, with other peoples around, and ask them, hey, how can we tackle this specific problem? And how can we tackle that? And then design a specific action towards it, and then ask for that action with that specific authority. That is to say, the president of the specific community or the leader or however political action is taken into account, or secretary, whatever. The thing is that we need to come from these specific frameworks, international frameworks, and to tone it down to the needs of the community in the local level, and then design some actions towards applying these ideas for, in that case, addressing and tackling all these specific action and problems to solving and creating solutions.
Thanks, Jesus, and thanks to all. Now that I know where is the chat, I can see another question to Juliany. So it says, how it started your motivation to be involved with your movement in discernment?
Okay, thank you for the question, Bianca. Well, it all started when I was at the permanent mission of Mexico to the United Nations. What I did was, I did not get the chance of actually working on the disarmament, on the first committee, which is mainly on disarmament. So that made me think that I actually wanted to get involved in that aspect. Personally speaking, as I mentioned, Mexico is like a leader on disarmament. We have a Nobel prize winning Alfonso Garcia Robles, which was the person who implemented the Treaty of Tlatelolco, who was pushing the agenda on disarmament and nuclear disarmament. And that's how I got mainly interested on it, because it is not that known that for example, that Mexico has this agenda, personally speaking. So that's why I really got interested in this, because I think that we can actually change a bit of what is being done in the world. And as I mentioned, the political context that we're facing internationally is really polarized, and it is not that unified in working towards disarmament. It is actually going on the opposite way. Instead of working towards disarmament, there are a lot of countries that are looking to not report or voluntarily report how many different types of weapons they have in their own country. And specifically speaking about nuclear weapons, it is an estimated number. Countries are not open or transparent about it, and that's something that made me realize the importance of it. And for example, there are witnesses and victims from the nuclear weapons from Hiroshima and Nagasaki that are called hibakusha, and they are advocates and activists on disarmament. But before someone knows about this hibakusha, I know that a lot of people don't have it in their daily mind who are the hibakusha and what they do. So that's something that really motivated me, thinking that they do this activism and this work, and we as youth should do something. We're the present, the future, and we should also advocate for future generations, right? And there's a lot of activism in climate change and the climate crisis and climate justice, but there is not that much youth engagement on disarmament. So that's what really motivated me to make this platform, which is starting. And if you want to be part of it, you should really reach out. We will share our contact information in a few moments. But that's like the main thing of creating and making people conscious of the importance of disarmament. And it is really interesting because throughout this process, I have found people from nuclear states or countries that have nuclear weapons have being really passionate and keen on wanting to push the disarmament agenda. So that's something that has really made me motivate a bit more. So my thought was, if Mexico pushed the disarmament idea, why shouldn't youth in Mexico push it? And if people that are on nuclear weapon states or states that have nuclear weapons, why shouldn't we push the agenda? So that was like mainly my thought. And it is very important to push this agenda with the whole, you could say, political international system that we have. I mean, there needs to be a lot more of empathy and unity, and this peace culture that we think about within sustainable development should be really thought to be contextualized in all aspects. So for Mexico, disarmament is a key factor, and that's why it is also and should also be supported. Thank you.
Kind of
Sorry, Arjan, we are hearing your microphone. Yeah, thank you so much. So the chat say, well, and the chat I'm saying Bianca saying, "Wow, all honesty, very admirable, Juliany." And yeah, Juliany is very admirable. Also, Santiago, María, Fernanda, Jesús, and Patricio is not here. So do you have another? Okay, so we have another. Sonali is saying, one of my colleagues was listening to your interesting panel and she wanted to ask you all, how do I cultivate resilience for this open discussion without the fear of being judged? So we can start with Jesus. Why not?
Thank you. Oh my God, this is also a really important question, and I'll be honest with you. Being judged is something that is always going to happen, and that is that it's always something that we're all really vulnerable to, and even if that happens, that doesn't mean that we should always be afraid of being judged. And also that means that we have to be also resilient in the sense of that the things that we're doing are for the sake of a specific action, that is to say a specific goal, but also with the openness that judgment is not, it's not just scrutiny against someone, but rather an opportunity also to learn things that we do not have the perspective on to begin with. So every time we're open to somebody, we are also open for them to come back and out with something. And that is also the opportunity to decide whether we take that feedback or not. Because there's always like a really important part of feedback is that sometimes that feedback can be constructive or destructive. And also it's more about how we share our thoughts, from where we're sharing our thoughts, because after all, these thoughts of sharing are coming from a place that's either a place from love or a place of learning, or it can also come from a place of arrogance or a place of being full of them of yourself or whatever. So I guess the most important part is to be always keen on sharing from the most humility way possible, from a really open proposition on sharing stuff, and then having the opportunity to not just share as if you were the expert, but rather sharing for the opportunity to learn back something new that you can build upon that. So every single opportunity of sharing spaces are opportunities for us to build back better and to build back stronger. So that's why in my specific case, in a personal case, I love being in these spaces because I can learn so many things of everyone and from everything. So if it's to learn, then so be it. and that's why I'm so happy for it. Thank you.
So, how about Maria Fernanda? Do you want to say something here?
Yes, this question is very interested and it's so personal. And we need to remember this. The way and the strategic for try to create a resilience around the activists is personal, very, very personal. But in my opinion, it's challenging because I grew up as someone who placed a lot the importance of the external validation. For me, in my childhood, in my teen era, are very important the opinion of the other people. But now, as an activist, the critics are always present. And my personal strategic, it's very simple, and it's in the 3 steps. The first one, knowing what you do. If you understand your topic, if you understand your passion, you have all the strategies for create a resilience because you're a passionate person and you have the knowledge about this topic and you have the strategic, you have the positions, you have the stage, and you always have that opportunity to use your voice and use your voice in this world and use your voice being a girl, being a woman in countries like Latin America and all the countries in the sorted world are important. Use our voice. So remember this for me. It's the first step. The second step is always try to have the knowledge in my brain. Always have to the information, the data, because if I have the data and that data it's obviously right, I don't have the problem. The problem is yours, not mine, because I have the numbers, I have the information, and I have the news. And the number 3 is create an alliance with my friends. Friends like this. I have this person in my life that back me in the problems, back me in the critics, and they know me, they know my work, know my strategies, and that's for me it's alone because I'm not alone in this world. I have 4 friends in this line, and for me that's the only thing. In these 3 steps, I create my resilience, and we have bad days, obviously, we have good days, but it's part of the work as an activist and try to create a change in our world. But remember, if are not you, who? And if not now, when? So yeah, that's my question. That's my answer for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Maria Fernanda. Then, Santiago, do you want to speak about this?
Sure, I'd like to. Thank you very much for giving me the ground. So I think that I will answer this question through 2 very different lenses. So the first one, speaking about climate change and specifically the climate justice movement here in Mexico, environmental defenders, land defenders, indigenous communities, children and youth, there is an instance in which we don't have a choice but to be brave enough to raise our demands. We don't have a choice because either our natural resources are being extracted from our lands, even when the state is watching, because our voices are not being heard enough, and moreover, they're being repressed. So I believe that speaking up against what matters comes from a place of bravery, but also comes from a place of solidarity. We have to be very empathetic on the fact that we are not the center, but the collective cause is the one that needs to be centered in the discussion. We need to make sure that we are opening the space for the people that need those spaces in order for them to speak for themselves about the things that they are facing. We need to work together as youth in order to open up the space for the most affected people and areas who are actually being impacted the most, we need to include them in this type of forums. For example, we need to make sure that equity of representation is safeguarded, even if inside of youth spaces. And finally, in terms of policy making, we could call it like that, we also have to be very keen on endorsing and on supporting international treaties that are specifically centered on protecting life defenders. We have, in the context of Latin America and in the context of United Nations policies, we have recently COP2 of Escazú, which is actually focused on protecting land defenders and safeguarding their autonomies in line with their identity, in line with their pledge, and in line with their demands. So it is our duty as youth to recognize that these are international treaties that are actually focused on protecting people, that are protecting life, protecting natural resources, and exercising resistance. We need to make sure that they are protected. And in order for us to do that, we need to start recognizing that these initiatives are important, not only for Mexico, but in the context of Chile, in the context of Argentina, in the context of Colombia, Venezuela, in the context of Latin American and global South countries, which hold very high rates on environmental persecution and prosecution, which hold very high rates on environmental assassinations and violence against them. And I think that my answer would be that we need to stand with the defenders, and we need to do so from a place of solidarity and from humility. We need to recognize our privileges and use our privileges to create opportunities for us all. Thank you.
Thanks, Santiago. Then we have Juliany, please.
Thank you for giving me the floor, Diana. And I would agree that with all of my colleagues and friends that with social media and with the mass information that we get every day and the amount of stimuli that we get, we feel overwhelmed all the time. It is not normal, the amount of information that we are exposed to each and every day. And especially with the easy access we have sometimes with social media, and especially when we don't see each other, right? It is much easier to send a message or to criticize or be judgy within a text message because you don't see people, right? And that would definitely change if we were to see the person right in front of us and tell them what they're writing, right? So I would agree that we are in a moment where it is much easier to be nice, but it is also a moment to be mean. It's like there isn't much of a balance sometimes, but it is what we have and what we are facing right now with the fourth technological revolution that we're facing, and with artificial intelligence. We will actually in the future be facing a lot more types of technologies and platforms that we should be that we should be considering, and also creating the tools for mental health, right? Because that will be very overwhelming. So I would say that considering this access and these messages and this type of, you could say, mutual feeling that is on social media, I would say that it is very important, and to grabbing on to what my colleagues already mentioned, as Jesus mentioned, being humble all the time, being humble with your friends and with each other, and that will teach you that no one is better than you and that you are no better than anyone. I think that's very important. And for example, what María Fernanda mentioned and the steps that she already has established for her own mental health, I think that's something that's very important, of having this support group and of actually having the facts and of being passionate about what you're doing. That's very important as well. And what Santiago mentioned is the bravery that we need, that we have to have. I think that's very important. And that's like a mixture of feelings, right? So I would say that not feeling judged, I mean, we will always feel judged. I think that's something that you start to live with. And I mean, it's okay. You just need to handle it. Some days it will affect you more than others, and that's fine. That's why you have your support group, as Maria Fernanda mentioned, and that is why it's so important, and have someone to talk to, right? About how you're feeling and how you're actually what you want to express, right? Without feeling judged, and telling the person who you're talking to, I want you to say something, or I want you to hear me. I think that's something we should always start with as well. And something very, very important from this is creating a safe space for other activists. If we know that how it feels to be judged, we should always make other activists not known or new, or that are interesting in activism or in doing advocacy or some policy change making. We should always give them a safe space to feel welcome and to feel that they can share their ideas, and that it is not nothing that they say is wrong, that it is okay what they're expressing, and that it's okay to make mistakes, because we cannot share a speech of being humble and of being open-minded and of being brave if we do not do it, right? So that's something that I think all of us here share, that we're always open with people so that they can feel welcome, and that they can feel that their needs and their ideas matter, and that they're going to be listened. So that's something that I would say that is very important, to not just think about yourself, but also how your actions affect others, and how you should really make them feel, right? So that's very important.
Thank you, Juliany, and thank you, all of you. So the chat is saying, Sonali says, it's so true. Rafael just joined us a minute ago, and it's already worth it. Thank you so much. If there's anybody who is already in this panel, and we can have some questions more, do you guys want to say something like final thoughts? Oh, Sonali, we are
Before
hearing you.
before the final, yeah, before the final words, I have a question for everyone. Maybe we'll not take a lot of time on it, but yeah, I just wanted to check, what it is going to be like when you define a world where we have achieved, the UN Agenda 2030. Let's imagine that we have created that world and we have achieved everything mentioned in the agenda, right? How do you see that world? Maybe in a line or two, if you want to summarize it, what that world looks like to you. That's my question.
So do you want, someone wants to start, or maybe Santiago?
Sure. So I believe that, Sonali, that is a very interesting question to ask, and for me, I believe that I would consider three aspects after having implemented the 2030 agenda. If we achieve that point in history, I think that we should move forward from three main points, which are love, understanding, and positivity. We need to be able to love each other, and we need to be able to embrace who we are as individuals and as communities in order to grow from that love and make it even further. The second point has to do with understanding. And as you guys are looking at it right now, we have very different perspectives. We come from various backgrounds. And even though we may not agree on certain things, we are here from a place of unity, and we are open to discussing and learning from other people's point of views. And the third point has to do with positivity. And I think that is one of the main forces that right now drives us as activists. The hope that the future can be better, and the hope that we can make that future happen. So I believe that those are the three main aspects that I would consider. But again, I would say that those that the standpoints in which we act are very personal and have to do with the context of each and every one of us. But for me, those three aspects are universal and apply to every society: love, understanding, and positivity. How to grow from there.
Thank you, Santiago. I cannot agree more. I mean, the way you have summarized it, I think it's so amazing. Thank you so much. I really loved your answer.
In my case, I would like to share with you also my thoughts on that. And for instance, for me, a world with the 2030 agenda accomplished is a world that will need constant feedback and maintenance. We understand as countries that, for instance, for violence to happen, a consensus is needed. And that consensus must be done within the actors of sustainable development, the people, the planet, the prosperity, and all those values within the 23 agenda. That is to say, a conduit for change from within and from all voices heard, from leaving no one behind, and from maintaining this status quo. Because after all, the forces of good are always having to counter the challenges of misunderstanding, of misunderstood people from other spaces, from other places. And that is to say that we need to encounter a world from peace, understanding that peace is multifactorial. It's coming from lots and lots of other definitions, from values from within the people and from all other perspectives. So a 2030 world accomplished also is a complex world to maintain. And then the efforts for what's next is to maintain the spaces of representation and also the spaces of everyone, so that everyone feels at home in this world. And that's the idea, understanding that this is our world and this is our home.
Wow, thank you so
My
much.
case,
Yes, Juliany, please go ahead. I would love to hear from everyone.
thank you. Sorry. I would say that for me, it would be thinking of diversity as an opportunity instead of a problem. And within that diversity, thinking of inclusion. And in that aspect, I would say that diversity would mean having a world where we accept diversity and we hug it, as we would say, and embrace it within our society, and think of diversity as not being a problem, rather than an enriching way of solving problems and of solving new ways and new ways of living. For example, with the 30 agenda being accomplished, I think that that would be a good way to start off with, embracing that we're all different, but that doesn't mean that there will be problems. Rather than the opposite, it will enrich the whole humanity and the way we live in.
Thank you, Juliany. That was very nicely summarized. Thank you so much for your answer.
And yeah, I'm the last. And in my opinion, we need to remember that we always be new challenge, because our society is in constantly evolving and evolution. And what we must learn in the process of the implementation of the agenda is how to form alliance to face this challenge. The implementation of the alliance, it's not the goal. The goal is create a united world, create a one specific plan for our world. And in the future, we probably confront a new challenges. But if we have the opportunity to learn, create alliance, create a team at an outward, probably we have a good future. A good future has humanity. But yeah, for me, it's this. It's not the implementation. It's not the future. It's the alliance now, and this alliance for the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Maria. That's That's very important. We need to be collaborative in our approach. We need to be aligned with everyone. Thank you so much. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you. Thank you all. So we have another question for Ramber. I hope I'm saying it right. So the question is, how can schools and educational institutions better integrate principles of the UN Agenda 2030 into their curriculums and activities? Someone wants to participate here? Jesus, I think you have a lot of saying.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll be just really brief on this. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me because of my internet? Yeah, that's better. Okay, perfect. Yes, education is one of the most important aspects in all humankind because it's the ability to pass in on each other's the knowledge for surviving the next generation and so ever. So, for me, understanding that the role of education within the 23 agenda is understanding the role of breaking the paradigms we have on every single aspects on humanity. That is to say, the aspects on specific topics such as discrimination, such as gender equality, such as the respect we must have with Mother Nature, and all that stuff. So, for me, and implementing the 23 agenda must be something done. And the most important work that we should be doing is from the education places, from basic education, from the elementary schools, from those kids, through all the education and implementation of the agenda as a state of values, not as a state of, for instance, as a rule set of thought, rather as values that we can touch, that we can feel, and that we can share. Because after all, it's the values of whole humanity, I guess. I mean, the breakthrough of the 23 agenda is that in 2015, it was the very first time they also put into the discussions civil society and people away from the international politics, which then again it's a breakthrough because it means that they were hearing the other sides of people. So for me, that's the most important part, to address education in the very first stages within the 23 agenda so that we can break all the paradigms of discriminations and all the topics that today are problems that we must solve. So yeah, thank you.
Maria Fernanda, please.
Yes, thank you, Diana. And the first thing we must remember is that the principles of the 23 agenda are designed to be adapted at the local context of each country. And in this sense, in my opinion, the first is we must have a very clear understanding of the social, political, and economical reality of our country and our community. And with this information, yeah, we have the opportunity. We need a much clearly idea of what we need to include in a primary objective in our realities, in our educational centers. And focusing of a school and educational space, we cannot make process without understand the challenge of their schools have now. For example, in the context of the SDG2 around the hungry in our world, we need to recognize that in our country, for example, in Mexico, many children around of my country go to school without having breakfast because in their homes don't have the opportunity to pay an apple or pay a sandwich because, yeah, their families don't have the opportunity. And this is essential to address to the educational issue. If we don't understand all the context of our community, we don't have the opportunity to implement the agenda because the agenda are structured for this, for understand the context and be adapted. That's my answer. Thanks.
Thanks, Maria Fernanda. Santiago or Juliany, do you have any thoughts you want to share with us?
I think that I have an interesting perspective that I'd like to contribute with in the panel session. I believe that one of the key factors when analyzing education, specifically at the local level, has to do with the people that are receiving that education. And as a matter of fact, the majority of the people that are receiving education are children. And I think that children in every single context have their own logic and their own way of visualizing the world around them. And I think that sometimes we do not understand that. And sometimes we like to impose our own mindsets and our own ways of seeing and acting rather than actually taking the time to understand how is it that children visualize the world, which issues are they seeing as of utmost relevance, how is it that they are planning to solve these issues. I believe that the first step in order to planify educational initiatives to better public education has to do with listening children, with listening the ones that are receiving those resources, and from then we can then start to move forward. But we need to push that agenda of children at the international level, not only in the context of education, but also in the context of the climate crisis. When we speak about development, when we speak also about economic stability, we need to consider children and the way in which they see the world.
Thank you, Santiago. Juliany, do you have any thought you want to share? Please.
Yes, thank you. I would say that, well, I really enjoy neuroscience and everything that's related to it as a hobby. And I like reading about, there's a famous writer which is a neurologist and a neuroscientific. His name is Eduardo Calixto, and he's from Mexico. And he studied at the Autonomous University of Mexico, which is called UNAM. And he writes a lot about the influence about different aspects, about when you're angry and when you're happy and when you're eating ice cream and when you sleep and the hours you sleep and all. But it also talks about, he also mentions in the book that I like, which is called The Perfect Imperfect World. It talks about how children are like tiny sponges, and everything that they learn at a young age, at their early stages, it is very important to the way that they're going to be forming as adults. So everything that they hear and they see and they live within their reality is very important to the person they're going to become in the future. So education, as Jesus, as Fernanda, and as Santiago mentioned, it is crucial for children. And of course, it is very important that they are heard in that sense, because it is a moment which will actually form a big part of the way they're going to be when they're adults. And I think that sometimes, or at least I didn't know that was like the huge impact that we have. But then later on, reading on this and all, I noticed the big impact that the early stages of our life, and of course the school that we go to and the people that we are with, influence our way of seeing the world as an adult or as a young person, right? So that really impacted me. And from like starting from that point and knowing that information, I think that education, as they mentioned, has a crucial key and one of the most important role in wanting to implement the 2030 agenda. And of course, this can't be done, as Santiago mentioned, without hearing what they have to say. I mean, through the years, I've seen that children have even statements that are even more complex to some that I might be able to state, you know? I mean, I think that we underestimate them a lot. We underestimate us a lot. And I think that we should stop doing that, and we should create spaces where children at a very young age can say what they are interested in and what they like and what they want to see, what they want to feel, right? So that's very important for them to feel safe within education. I think that's very, very important. And as we have all mentioned, we have a lot of security problems in our own country, but that has not been an obstacle for children. And of course, it has been an impediment for children to even attend school, or the fact that there isn't the actual infrastructure for them to being able to study, or there isn't the income in their families, as Fernanda mentioned, so that they can attend school, or they can actually learn well if they are not having a nutritious meal, for example. So that's very important, but these are things that should be integrating within. And I would say that something that we should really work on as future decision makers, which I see, is that we need to think of the implementation as a key role on education, because sometimes there are a lot of good initiatives and projects and ideas, but we have very big challenges when it comes to the implementation of having an integral and like integrity at the education, and having like a complex and complete curriculum. So that's something that's very important, that I would say that as all of us hearing as future decision makers, we always need to take into account. And when we have that role as a decision maker or as a policy maker, that we give and provide those spaces for those children when we were at that moment, and think, hey, I was that age and I did not have the opportunity to say what I really wanted to learn, or to think, or the tools that I wanted to learn about, and provide those spaces. So that's what I would say about education in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliany, and thank you all. So in the chat, we have some comments. One is from Luis Luján. Thank you so much for this incredible event. As a young person trying to get involved in activism, your expertise really inspires me. We have another from Sonali, who says, yes, it's very important to understand the context. Luis Luján also, totally agree. We need to start local for solving global challenge. And Sonali says, so true, children have voices too, and they need to be heard. So we don't have another question, so I'm going to ask as a final thoughts. I see a lot of young people who are here, so if you can share a tip to all of them, and share also your contact info so they can also search you, and we can create some good opportunities and some good experience. So we can start with Juliany, and then we go.
Okay, thank you, Diana, for giving me the floor. And I would just like to say that thank you for everyone who was listening and who actually took the time to be here and to accompany us in this panel discussion, which was very enrichful for me personally speaking, and I hope that for you as well. And I would say that I feel very enriched with a lot of the things that my friends have said, and your comments as well in the discussion. I would say that it has made me full of the hope and of the optimism that sometimes I need to keep going, as we mentioned when we talked about feeling judged and all. I think that I would say that whenever you are feeling doubtful about yourself and what you're doing, I would just say that you can count on people like Fernanda, Jesús, Diana, and Santiago to help you out. And I will share at the end our contact information, and you can really send a message, an email to us in our social media, even expressing how you feel, or if you want to address something in particular of what we've said, you feel free to reach out to us, because that is something that we preach and we practice. So thank you for all.
Thanks, Juliany. Then María Fernanda, do you want to
Yes, first of all, thanks to Diana for this space and for creating this panel for us. All the work around this panel, it's for her. Her have this opportunity and give us this opportunity, and it's important. Remember that. Thanks, Diana, and thanks for the team of the Change America 20 for this space. And I just have one thing to conclude. Remember that your cause is important. Your role in the activism is important, and with the right alliance, we will able to achieve all the challenge we desire for a better world. And that's the thing. If we create a good connections and we remember what important is our house and what important is our passion, we have the opportunity to create these changes and try to create a better future for all of us. Thanks so much to Juliany, Jesús, Santiago, Diana, and all the participants in this panel. That's a great moment for me, for all of us. Thanks, and I expect to see you in another international spaces of activism. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, María Fernanda. Then Jesús.
Thank you. I will share with you, and I would like to share with everybody that one of the most important things is to trust in yourself, that you're doing something you really want to do, and go for that leap. After all, fear is not that, it's an emotion that needs to be addressed as an emotion that just makes you a sign of uncertainty, but not of stopping you. Fear is just an emotion that you can say, okay, this is just a signal that there is some uncertainty on whatever I want to do, but that does not mean that it's going to be a total failure. And then again, if it is a failure somehow, it's just an opportunity of always learning. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you always learn. So my recommendation to everyone hearing this amazing panel is that there, because if you're there, you can always be learning something new, and if it goes right, then you did it. You were doing amazing. So so that's my take on all the stuff you can do, is to dare yourself to believe in yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesús. And last but not least, Santiago.
Much for giving me the word. I'd also would like to use this space to thank Diana for facilitating this opportunity to the three of us. I believe that one of the things that was mentioned by the three of us during this conversation was the real need that that here in Mexico we have of making alliances in between young people. And I would like to recognize that even though you didn't have an intervention, Diana, today, you did something huge, which was bring three young people from various contexts of incidents, and you made them you made them being heard today. So thank you for that. And also I'd like to use this opportunity to thank my fellow colleagues, Juliany, Mafer, and Jesús. They have been such a huge support system for me personally during these last few months. And lastly, I would like to say to the participants that were in this session, thank you very much for taking the first step towards action, because you may see this as a very narrow opportunity, but it is the first step that you are taking, or probably the second or the third, in order to change the things, to change how things are being made. So thank you very much for investing your time with us today, and I hope that we can meet each other soon as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Santiago. Someone can help me to share your contact, please? And please feel free to reach any of our panelists. And thank you so much for all of you to being here to listen to our panelists. I'm very happy to this. And I'm very happy to have you as a friends, but also as a colleagues. Guys, you do amazing job. So we're going to leave this canvas here. So if you want to reach any of our panelists, there is their contact. And thank you so much, all of you.